Welcome to another episode of Social and Media Matters Talks. I'm delighted to have Dr. Rachel with us today, who is the founder of TrustElevate. She's a leading expert on online child safety. And back in 2000, she set up her first UK Internet Safety Center. She's also an author of a technical standards published by the British Standards Institution that describes how to verify the age band a person belongs in a privacy-preserving, secure manner. I once again welcome you, Dr. Rachel.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
It's so great to have you and finally with us for this Social Media Matters talk. I'm sure all the viewers who are watching this episode will be really happy to see that we have Dr. Rachel with us, and she's going to share some tremendous insights of her work and also of the changes that she's trying to bring, especially in the UK and in the arena of child safety, especially. So to begin with, I would just like to understand a little bit about how do you think that this whole space of trust and safety with respect to child safety, how do you see this so that we can align well with the next questions?
Perfect. Well, I've been working in this whole area since the mid-1990s. I started my PhD, which was analyzing paedophile activity on the internet. That started in 1996, right? And that was around the time of the Wonderland case, where there were guys live streaming abuse of children online, and it was very, very worrying. And so I worked with the Dutch police, the Belgian police, the paedophile unit in Scotland Yard, and the Irish Gardaí Síochána. I was part of my doctoral research to understand the nature, scale, and extent of paedophile activity on the internet. So that research helped to inform the 1998 Child Pornography Act. And it became apparent through my research that these guys were like searching for like-minded adults, right? They were exchanging tips about how to groom and interact with children and young people. So that really is the genesis of why I'm so passionate about why we need to know the ages of users online so that we can create safer spaces, right? It's really, really important. I really admire the work that you're doing also, right? And I know how difficult it is I ran those internet safety centers. So we were trying to develop programs of education for children and young people, but also those people who are responsible for their care, including like parents and teachers and social workers, because it's really important to have that safety net to create safer opportunities for children online, and also for children to feel confident that they can talk to a parent who will listen to anything bad that has happened and not overreact, and just tell that child, I've got your back. No matter what you tell me, I will be there for you and I will help you, right? That's the most profound and important message. I've also worked within industry as chief security officer for a social networking platform. So I've seen firsthand, I've set up the abuse management systems. I've trained people and put the processes and procedures together for how we handle situations when people are posting content that promotes, for example, eating disordered behaviors, suicidal ideation. So there are a lot of potential harms online, and also how we help people to deal with the issues around trolling and romance scams, etc. So there's a lot of very positive things that you can say about technology in terms of it being empowering and helping people to connect with really good people. But there's, at the same time, there are negative aspects. So for the last 15 years, I've dedicated my time to trying to say, okay, how do we enable these platforms to know the ages of their users? How can we enable parents, good digital parenting? Because very often parents can feel overwhelmed. It's like, these are giant companies. I need my child to be on devices and access the internet because I want them to get a good job. But at the same time, I know that there's bad things that can happen. So often parents don't turn up to parents' evenings about internet safety because they're like, somebody might point out something that I'm doing that's bad. So what we're doing right now is trying to empower those parents and saying there's new legislation that requires companies to know the ages of their users and requires companies to respect children's rights to participate in an online environment and to respect their data. And what TrustElevate does is we verify children's ages online, and we verify an attestation. When somebody says, I'm the parent of this child, we verify whether that's true or not. And then we enable that parent to say yes or no to a child's access. But most importantly, when they do say yes for a child's access, if that child subsequently comes to the parent and says, I've seen this bad stuff, the parent then has the right and the ability to go to the regulator and say, my child has seen negative stuff, harmful and illegal content, even though the platform knew the age of the child. So what we're doing is empowering those parents to hold companies to account. So that's the kind of evolution, Patricia, over the last 26 years that has kind of taken shape in the kind of trust and safety, online safety kind of environment.
That's incredible to know that the the diversity that you have worked in, the space that you've worked in. Also, you've been guiding a lot of big tech companies, especially with the child frameworks. Um, you've been instrumental in that way. So, given your work with government bodies and also with tech giants, so what role do you see that regulation playing in enhancing online safety for children? And how do you feel that regulatory frameworks that can effectively basically make a balance for protection with the imperative of maintaining digital freedom and innovation?
Absolutely. That is such a brilliant question. For 20 years, we had this notion, industry used to say to regulators and to governments, hey, technology is changing so fast, you leave it to us. We'll self-regulate. It's all going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. And I remember also being naive enough myself when I joined industry to think that that actually was a true intention. And I chaired a cross-industry group with MySpace, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, all the large companies. And we got together to develop the safer social networking principles on behalf of the European Commission. So we worked on those. We went to Brussels on a regular basis. It took a number of months. We created those. There was a signing ceremony that took place with the commissioner, Viviane Reding, and all of the companies, as per the recommendations, had made under 16s profiles on social media private. So I was like, wow, this is fantastic. 6 weeks later, they changed them back to public, right? Because the attitude is, unless we're legally required to do this, we're going to prioritize profits over safety, right? And profits are about the attention economy, making sure that everybody's connected, they're online. So if you put everybody under 16 in private mode, it's more difficult for them to connect with other people and for other people to find them. So what we saw was that companies prioritize profits over children's safety. Now the regulators and lawmakers realize that that's actually that's actually what happens. And there's been some really powerful pieces of legislation that have come into force recently. For example, in a European Union context, the Digital Services Act, Article 28 of that specifically addresses children and says every company has a duty of care toward children and young people. They must protect their data rights. Article 21A says that we as parents have the right to redress, so that if those companies do not comply with the law, the regulator can fine them on behalf of those people that have been negatively impacted. And there's also this out-of-court settlement process that's been put in place. And what we're seeing around the world in India and other countries is a replication of the General Data Protection Regulation, and there are provisions for special protections that recognize the vulnerabilities of children, right? They're not adults, they need special protections. So we definitely do need regulation. The notion of self-regulation is absolutely just not going to work, and we've seen that, and we're living with the consequences of believing that that would ever work.
Certainly, and I think so. Having a multi-stakeholder group agencies, where even parents and educators are involved,
Yeah.
especially to educate children about, what their privacy means, what their rights means, what the responsibilities also mean, what are their duties, will also be a good platform for them to even know about their own rights when we're talking about protection.
Yes.
That also puts us in a space where we are talking about the rights and duties of parents and educators as well. While we are trying to improve the systems that are being created by the responsible authorities,
Mm-hmm.
which involves the law enforcement agencies, big tech companies, government bodies, regulators coming into action. But asking you another question on that, so as a thought leader and somebody who's been working in this space, how do you envision the future of online safety evolving? When I especially want to talk about with advancing of technologies such as artificial intelligence, also we see AI generated CSAM content now. A
Yes.
lot is being talked about. So, what proactive measures do you think that industry or stakeholders should take to stay ahead of all these potential risks?
Absolutely. So I'll answer that in two parts. Your point about a multi-stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical. And it's wonderful that Social Media Matters helps to facilitate that, because we have to listen to the views of young people and those responsible for their care. Those are absolutely critical. Otherwise, lawmakers and policymakers are creating laws in vacuums. So that's critical. And what we're seeing, for example, in the US and in other countries around the world, we're seeing digital natives, kids that have grown up and only known the world with the internet in it. They've been negatively affected by the things that they've seen online, but they also have had the benefit of education, and they want a seat at the table. It's a Design It For Us campaign run by Emma Lembeke and others in the US. They're going to the Senate at the Senate judiciary hearings and verbalizing, listen to us. We've been through this. We should be stakeholders in the crafting of new laws around AI, but also the policies and procedures and everything else. So the second part of that question, in terms of AI and CSAM, I posted a LinkedIn post today on this topic, and we have to be very, very careful, because there are some people out there that say, hey, if it's AI generated child sexual abuse material, there's no actual child hurt. So maybe it's okay. It's like, stop thinking like that, because, right, it creates a marketplace for, there's a guy in the US that's been arrested by the FBI, and it really, really highlights all of the things. He used the AI generated CSAM to groom a child, and then also to gain kudos and status amongst like-minded teens and adults with a sexual interest in children, saying, I can create this content. In my PhD, I analyzed how these communities operate, and it's central to that is CSAM. So they collect them, exchange CSAM, exchange details of fantasies and alleged experiences, and also how to groom kids. So what we're doing is it's AI generated CSAM has very negative effects in terms of normalizing, legitimizing, and justifying sexual contact with children. It's used to instruct children about how to take explicit images to feed this. So it has direct impact, negative impact on children and young people. So we do need to be very cautious about this, and ensure that those companies are engaged in the processes of developing methods to combat these sorts of activities, right? And we also need to educate children and young people, because when children are seeing this content, they assume that this is normal and that this is okay, and that if somebody asks them to do this, that's acceptable. So we need to be vigilant as parents to ensure that we're educating kids properly around this, and your body is yours and shouldn't be exposed, and you shouldn't feel pressured into doing stuff. So there are some challenges ahead.
Indeed, and it is critical in the sense when we also talk about safety by design, when we talk about policies, when we talk about community standards over there. Our thought has always been that it should be country specific because cultural nuances, language plays a very big role over there. It cannot be just defined globally. You might have, like, especially for the big tech companies over there, you might need some global standards, but then you need to break them down into country specific standards. Like the implementation part has to be country specific, especially because what's happening in US might not be applicable to the Indian community. So that has always been a debate, and there has been a slight shift in the thought processes over of the big tech companies, especially. And I'm hopeful that, this is also considered by the larger groups as well, because that's the key. We cannot just have standards which is applicable for UK and get implemented by all other countries, or applicable for US and get implemented by other countries, or vice versa, even for India. So that has been the key point. And talking about safety by design and the policies, because that is also much talked about when we talk about mechanisms. So what is your thought upon it? Like, how do you think that when it comes to online grooming, when it comes to CSAM content, how is that design aspect play a big role over there? Because children, they get lured by with something which is very sensitive, and then it just builds on.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about that?
So I'd answer that in two ways. So number one, you were talking about the cultural specificities in relation to moderation. And you can hear by my accent, I'm Irish. And you know that there's Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, and there's a war between the Catholics and Protestants. We called it the Troubles. So when I was looking after Bebo, there were cultural specificities there. So we have a different language, Tucky our law, we speak Gaelic. So there were bullying happening in Gaelic. And so our moderators in the US were like, we have no idea. Like, somebody's saying they're being bullied, we've no idea, because they didn't understand the context and the stuff. So I had to put training materials together to train them so that they would understand the context. So we very definitely have to be hugely aware of those cultural sensitivities because we're tackling misinformation and disinformation and bullying and trolling. That has to be at a local level with local knowledge to understand those sorts of issues. In terms of CSAM and where we're going forward, when I was doing my PhD, one of the studies was I posed as an 8-year-old little girl. My parents are always fighting, and I've moved to a new school, so highly vulnerable. And what we need to realize is that when these guys are chatting to kids, they're like, hey, sweetie, you're so beautiful. I love you. I'm going to be your friend. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to tell you a story every night. It's powerful. And the feeling, if you're lonely and feeling a little bit isolated or a bit vulnerable, somebody telling you that they love you is incredibly powerful, right? So we need to be aware that these are the sorts of tactics that are being used. And that kind of coercive control, then it starts off being lovely and feeling warm, and then there are requests to create CSAM material and stuff. And then it can quickly escalate. If you don't do this, if you don't make more pictures, I'm going to share this with everybody you know, and I'm going to ruin your life. I'm going to ruin your life, right? Or what we're seeing is financial sextortion. If you don't pay me $100 right now, I'm going to, right? And we've seen an increase in suicides amongst teens and children, right? So any parents listening to this, it's really, really important to understand that those are the sorts of dynamics. The children are being promised love and support, and somebody really, really wants to be a good friend, and then they find themselves in a very nasty situation. So we need to think about those things and think about how we educate and take the shame away, because these groomers will also say you're a bad person, you're a bad child, you're filthy, I don't like, so they really manipulate these children into feeling absolutely incredibly miserable. So what they need is actual love and support and understanding from those around them and those responsible for their care, to really save them.
Actually, it reminds me of an incident of child abuse back in years, which was shared by one of the police officers, of how they were able to uh, track that particular predator who was abusing children with
Right.
small um uh, to take advances, was bribing for chocolates.
Yeah.
And like basically now when we talk about CSAM, that's actually the elevated version of what we have been talking about or thinking about CSAM. Sorry, child abuse. So this is something we need to kind of highlight. We need to talk about, we need to address, especially when it comes to child protection, when it comes to child safety. And that is where, and that is the point where we need everybody to be equally educated, equally aware, equally responsible when it comes to child safety.
Exactly.
So, asking you my next question, because TrustElevate does fantastic work. So, talking about how do you focus on verifying age bands? Well, the product that you have in a privacy preserving and secure manner. If you could just little bit elaborate on that so that people know
Yes.
what TrustElevate has been doing and how they are trying to verify verify age of a child who is using any device.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what TrustElevate does, we require, so a parent, for example, we're working with mobile operators. So you know the way you have the native app with, what's the biggest mobile operator in India?
We have Airtel.
Okay, so you have My ATA, the native app. That's where you kind of pay your bill, etc. So what we do is put me and my family in there. So you open up the native app. You would enter your child's. It doesn't exist yet, but we will be coming to India soon. You enter your child's first name, last name, date of birth, and we have your mobile number. We hash those data points. We scramble them on the device, right? And then we check against authoritative data sources. These can be government and non-government data sources. And we ask for those to be scrambled, hashed also. And we say, okay, is there a match? And we get a yes, no response back. Now we get a yes, no. Is this a parent of, is this the authorized holder of parental responsibility for this child? Yes or no. So in the databases that we're checking against, is my telephone number associated with my child's first name, last name, and date of birth? Yes or no? And then is this child within this age band below 12 or between 13 and 16 or 17 plus, right? So we've spent a huge amount of time doing research and development to make it as simple as possible. So once we've verified you, it's verify once, use many times. So you're verified as the parent in the app. Your child then is using their device. They want to sign up to Lego. They enter your mobile number, their date of birth. It indicates they're under 13. They enter your mobile number. You'll get a bing notification and you'll go, oh, open up your app. You see, oh, my child wants to access Lego. You've already been verified. So you say yes. You see the data processors, the one to process your child's data. Yes or no? Done. The Lego is notified. This is a child below 12 and a verified parent has said yes or no to access and yes or no to data processing, right?
Isn't that just a wonderful tool that that people should just incorporate in the devices, and people should just adopt that, because it is a matter of children who are using mobile phones or different gadgets where verification is really important. So I
Exactly.
promise this is my second last question to you, and
No, fire away. I'm happy to join this.
and this is really interesting also to have a chat with you, because there's so much that we also get to learn from different experts who are talking about child safety from different lenses. And this just adds value because it is about verification of a child through a process which gives accessibility to other different applications that verifies the child's age through a responsible agency, that is the parent. So my next question to you is, with a vast experience spanning over like 25 years, if I'm not wrong,
Yes, you're
yeah,
right.
in this
80.
field. So what advice would you like to offer to emerging platforms, with especially with the startup companies, developers, regarding prioritizing and implementing effective trust and safety measures from the outset of their development when we talk about child safety?
Absolutely. So, if you're a startup, what you need to understand is that trust is a differentiator. If your users trust you to respect their data rights and to create an environment that's safe for the child's well-being, that will differentiate you. And we've been working with Deloitte in terms of how do you quantify the impact of trust. And there's a 4x increase in revenue, that it has a positive impact on the bottom line. And when so that in itself should be a motivator, rather than seeing verification of children as a compliance cost and something that you should avoid. It's better to embrace it and be part of the new, differentiate yourself from the existing platforms, right? We've all seen MySpace when there was mass migration from MySpace to Facebook and from Facebook to TikTok. People move based on something new. The idea that a platform will respect people's rights and create a safe environment for people, that can be super exciting. I use the analogy, if you go to a roller coaster park, right? There are the massive roller coaster, you have to be a certain height to get on. And then if you're small, if you're a kid, there's a roller coaster for you. It's equally as exciting an adrenaline rush for the kid because they're like, whoa, okay? So being safe and promoting well-being and participating in an online environment that's age appropriate is exciting for everyone. So if you're looking to expand and address the total addressable market in terms of the social media, gaming, streaming, or edtech or medtech, it's really important to know that that trust is important and that it's a quantifiable return on investment.
And
Right.
with this, if you can just wrap up with a small tip that you would like to give to the viewers who's watching this on child safety, would be incredible, because that will just sum up our whole interview.
Absolutely. Open those lines of communication with children, make them feel confident that you are going to listen to what they say and not be non-judgmental, and also engage and interact with them in terms of what they find exciting, and kind of participate. I know we as parents sometimes, when kids reach about 14, they're like, you're not cool anymore, but it's still really important to establish that relationship and also to articulate to kids about their data rights, right? People think that, whatever happens to your data, who cares? What we need to understand is that a psychographic profile is created based on all of the actions children take online. So each action, whichever website they visit, how long they watch that video for, who they share it with, all of that is being tracked at the moment. And that informs what's called a psychographic profile. That's an outline of whether this child is intelligent, in a single parent family, double family, what kind of income they have, what kind of spending they can do, whether they're prone to depression, how likely it is that they're to buy products if they're shown to them at specific times of the day. There's a level and depth of tracking and surveillance of children and young people, and also us as adults, that we need to be aware of and actually have some dialogue with kids about these things. So we're empowering them to make decisions in relation to their activities online, and how that may shape and inform their future. There are, for example, companies out there that conduct sentiment analysis on and track people's behaviors online. And that can be used by schools and universities to inform their decision making about whether or not they give kids access to these things, right? These are very serious violations of our data rights. So it's really important that we think carefully about these things and have that dialogue with children and young people. And don't just say, yes, accept all for cookies. Think about it and have that dialogue. And I think through conversation and support and love and understanding, right? And then taking actions and holding companies to account, we as a community can kind of reclaim and create a more equitable social contract between us as users and tech companies.
Certainly, and that was fabulous to end this interview.